Hello, and welcome to this liberal leadership debate and Andrew Furey resignation edition of the Scrimshaw Show. My name is Evan Scrimshaw. Good timing for good. I actually got lucky with timing for once. The Newfoundland and Labrador premier just resigned. The Liberals had a debate, and I had already scheduled my buddy Ben Oates to come on the podcast. And Newfoundland Young Liberal. Wrote a column for my site on Tuesday. Was that? Yeah, that's
Yep.
that time work. This week is it's Wednesday, and this week has already been a week. Ben Oates, you're coming on to chill for a bit and sort of talk through the news. We got lucky with the Fury announcement happening before you came on the pod. If he announced on Thursday, hypothetically, I would have lost my mind if he came on right after you'd come on the pod, not right before.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's lucky in the sense that for timing, but for the Newfoundland Labrador Liberals, we need Red Bulls now.
Yeah, because you guys have an election this fall, right?
We have an election this fall, so just to give, I mean, it's a similar-ish position to Ontario in a sense that we're going to have at least 3 elections at all 3 levels of government in the province, right? We got the federal one going, so all the liberal volunteer network apparatus is in full swing in like the candidacy mode, in the sense that a lot of people are back in Kearney, back in Freeland, whatever. But then also like we've got a provincial leadership race to worry about, and a provincial election, and municipal.
Ooh, the one kind of good thing about Doug going early is we that gives a little bit of separation to the municipal elections, which means that maybe the Ontario press might actually cover the mayorals for more than 6 weeks. Okay, we're gonna start with the debates just because the debates are more interesting, but I don't want to say conspiracy theory because that implies it's not a conspiracy theory. I have some names that I want to ask you about for the Newfoundland Liberal leadership at the end. So we'll have to get there. Also, tomorrow is tomorrow's the Ontario election, so I'll do like 3 minutes of that at the end while I make Ben suffer through it. I obviously wrote the live blog last night for the Liberal leadership debate. Top line thoughts were Carney had like a good night, did what he was supposed to do, needs to clean up the comms a little bit, but was fine. Agreed. Freeland was a disaster. Karina Gould, I like vaguely understand why people are saying she had a good night, but also it was vapid nonsense coming out of her mouth, and I feel like way too many people are judging her on style points and not actually engaging with any of the things that she actually said. And Frank Bayless exists. What in that do you agree with? What in that do you disagree with? Who do you want to make who do you want to fight me about? You're a Carney supporter. What did you make of Mark's night? Basically, the debate happened. Thoughts?
Yeah. So I was at a watch party last night for my MP Joanne Thompson. We were down at a brewery here, packed house, great time. Seamus Regan was there, Joanne was there, a bunch of provincial MHAs were there, yada 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 yada. And the one, you could hear a pin drop the entire time. But after the debate ended, it ended at 11:30 our time here in Newfoundland. The one broad consensus was, well, that was really boring, and that's a good thing in my opinion. I agree with all your first pass takes on all the candidates. Right, Mark had a fine night. He went in there, did what he wanted to do, got his point across, didn't make any gaffes. We're fine. Christia Unleashed is an interesting beast because it's really not. I mean, when you listen to what she's saying, it's really an interesting departure from what she was like in government to an extent, but the delivery and the comms perspective is just the exact same as she was in government. So, no shocks there. Karina Gould, I'm going to stick to the point. I still think she has potential. I think that she does, the things that she was peddling, even if they were a bit fluffy, are, good notional ideals. It's just really not it's not the leadership we need to meet this moment. The one wild card of the evening, in my opinion, was Frank Bayless. Yes, he was just there to exist, but he was outperforming expectations in the sense that, like, 60% of what he said I disagree with, but he had some pretty strong points, especially on healthcare and especially on productivity and stuff like that, right? And I think each candidate did bring something to the table, and I do hope that I hope all of these people are involved in a Carney government going forward, right? I think if their goal was to earn their keep in the next government, and I think that is the goal of Karina and of Frank Bayless, then they succeeded in marking their territory in that government. In terms of what Chrystia Freeland's doing, I don't really know. I don't really know what her message is, and I know that what she's selling is like, I'm the best person to take on Donald Trump. I'm the best person to take on Donald Trump. I'm the best person to take on Donald Trump. But sure. But I think Mark did a good job of cornering her and being like, all right, how we can slap tariffs until the cows come home, but we do need an economy to fall back on when the chickens come home to roost. I don't know why I'm making all the farm analogies today, but
my thing with Chrystia, we'll just start there, I guess, because it's where we agree. And also, I don't want Chrystia Freeland in the government. I would like her to politely, or not so politely, fuck off at this point. My problem with Chrystia Freeland is that she has been running this whole campaign about how she's an outsider, how she's running against the Ottawa establishment, how Mark Carney is truly the real insider, yada yada yada.
Yeah. If
and then she gets on a debate stage and doesn't shut the fuck up about how she was a cabinet minister, she was the finance minister, she was the foreign minister, she negotiated NAFTA, CETA, or the new NAFTA, I should say, all this crap, and it's like, so you're not running against the Ottawa establishment, you are the Ottawa establishment. I was there in 2015. I thought you were running against the establishment. I thought you were an anti-establishment crusader, Chrystia. Now you aren't, and I've known this the entire time, and I've called you out for just blatantly lying about this shit. But you don't get to do that. You don't get to do all of that noise and all of that talking about anti-establishment, about running against the Ottawa bubble, talking about how, report, like, the existence of, like, Jerry Butts and Braden, Kelly, I think. I've never heard your last name pronounced, buddy. Like, how, like, the existence of former Trudeau staffers supporting Mark Carney proves that, like, Carney is the continuity candidate, and then you run on governmental continuity. It's like, so what are you doing? Were you lying when you went on CBC and said that you're running against the Ottawa establishment, or are you lying now? The answer is she was lying then. But what are we doing here? And what is this campaign about? What is her purpose? And nobody. My favorite parlor game in Ottawa is texting, staffers I know, reporters I know, whoever the fuck I know, and being like, "What is Chrystia Freeland doing?" Nobody has a good answer, and everyone is baffled by this.
I think Chrystia Freeland's running because she wants, I think she's running with one thing in mind. She wants to beat the living shit out of Donald Trump, right? Which is a fair sentiment to have, but that seems to be the core of her messaging, right? It's like, I've taken him on, I'll take him on again. One thing she said stuck out to me pretty big last night. She said, after leaving cabinet, I feel liberated. And it was interesting. I'm not going to, this is not me trying to deflect from the main point, but she had some interesting thoughts, and I think they all had interesting thoughts on how they would run their respective governments, in the sense that Chrystia said, I'm liberated from this, and ever since then, she's just been kind of going, like you said, if she's an outsider, then I'm the next pope. Just doesn't really make sense. But they all had interesting thoughts on how they'd run their governments. And while I think Mark had the strongest answer, he said, I'm a hands-on leader. You kind of get that vibe off him. I've worked with people on my internships, kind of showing my inexperience here, but I've worked with leaders and bosses like him on my internships, and that's the kind of person you want to work for. But I think Christia had an interesting point about that, where she said, I'm not going to run it like Trudeau did. I don't believe in a one-man band. So I think there were all the right positive signals from the two of them. Bayless didn't say much about it. Karina had a very weak answer on that, in my opinion.
Yeah, so this is I think a lot of my objection to Gold is like, she talks about, her post-debate scrum thing is like, sometimes you just have to say the thing. Well, her criticisms of the Trudeau government, the things that she would do differently was, one, more power to the party grassroots, which, whatever you think of that, is not a governmental decision.
No,
right?
That's party, yeah.
That's party management. That's not the same thing. The Liberal Party and the Canadian government are not the same thing. And being a good, there are party leaders who would be good party leaders and bad prime ministers. And there are prime ministers who would be, or party leaders who would be great prime ministers who suck at party management. Those are two very different, distinct skills. I feel like Karina would actually be a very good party leader in that sense. She would be very good at connecting with the grassroots and all of that stuff. We'll get to that. We'll get to what I was about to say in a second. And then the second one is, we didn't do stuff quickly enough. It's like, okay, but what are we talking? But if we're gonna talk about, we just need to say the thing. Well, one, your criticism of Mark Carney and Chrystia Freeland for ditching the carbon tax. Well, they did just say the thing. They didn't actually waffle and pretend that suddenly they've had a Damascene conversion, right? They just were straight up about the fact that carbon action requires public buy-in, and we don't have public buy-in anymore. That is actually what just saying the thing means. That is in reality what saying the thing is just being honest about it, as opposed to some convoluted answer that you and I and everybody else would know is bullshit. And then it's like, okay, Karina, you've got this thing. You want to talk about being a straight shooter. You want to talk about just saying the thing. Your solutions? Oh, well, poverty costs money too. And we need to consider, UBI. And it's like, what the fuck are you talking about? You're going to, in the middle of a tariff war where we already have a budget deficit, your brilliant solution is another pilot project on UBI? Yeah. That's what you've got? And you're going to talk to me about fucking, sometimes you just got to say the thing? What are we doing here?
Yeah. Yeah, I know. That was a weak moment, in my opinion. I'm going to say something that might be a bit of a hot take, right? Carney's the change candidate. We all know that. He's a departure from what the Trudeau government's been doing. Believe it or not, no matter what the CPCs say, he's the change candidate. He would fundamentally change the objectives and the general marching orders of a Liberal government, right? He's a universalist as opposed to a social welfare dude. He had strong points. I'm not going to add to anything that he said last night, but just to touch on what he said, it was like, we need to, make sure the economic engine is ticking to make sure we can feed the social programs. He also had a very strong moment on healthcare. He said, healthcare is a right. We're not living up to our commitments. Beautiful. No problem. Carney, no notes, whatever. So Carney's a change candidate. Freeland, I originally thought was the continuation candidate, but I don't know what she is at the moment. I think Karina Gould, in terms of the messaging that she was delivering, was very in line with what the Trudeau government's been doing for the past, 9 years, right? She was, I won't say towing the party line, but it was very Sunny Ways messaging. And that's not what we need as a party right now. I don't think we should ever do that again. I think we need a cold, hard, calculating, we need someone to meet the moment. And Carney's that.
The thing for me about Gold, right, is she's trying to stake out a position as a progressive in the party, and she is trying to differentiate herself from the sort of stampede of people trying to throw bits of the Trudeau legacy overboard. But the problem is that Carney and Freeland aren't actually throwing the Trudeau legacy overboard. They're throwing one big policy overboard, right? But they're most, they're defending childcare, they're defending dental care, they're defending pharmacare, they're defending the child benefit, they're defending the trade record. Like it was pointed in the lack of pointedness at basically any criticism of Trudeau outside of that one question. And the criticisms of Trudeau, even from Carney were, he runs a one-man band and I'm not gonna, my PMO is not gonna be like deeply, deeply insular, and I'm actually gonna meet with my caucus. Like
crazy concept,
true and funny and like deeply hilarious given, this idea that like somehow Mark Carney is Katie Telford's puppet, the fucking 18-wheeler that he just, threw her under and then backed over, rocked back and forth over. But the thing for me, it's like you want to be continuity Trudeau, and it was continuity Trudeau in that it's the defense spending question was the one that got me. It can't remember, was it Gould or Freeland who was like, because Carney was like, I'm not going to promise we can get the 2% faster than we can, just to say that we're going to get there faster.
Which is the correct response.
And I think it was Freeland who was the one that was like, we can't let bureaucratic obstacles get in the way of doing what we need to do. And it's like, oh, so you're that, yeah. So that, you were in a government that literally just thought you could just solve any problem with a wave of a hand, and then repeatedly got caught in the muck of bureaucratic obstacles, aka practical realities. And it's just like, can we just have the guy who admits that you can't just wave a wand and suddenly you hit 2%?
Correct. Well, just this is napkin math, but getting the 2% of GDP spending is another like $280 billion per year, something like that, right? Some crazy high number. So to say you're going to deploy that amount of funding in 2 years without having a solid concrete plan of where you're going to put it is crazy talk. It's irresponsible, right? So I applaud.
Well, unless what you're going to do is just give everybody a 50% raise, so that overnight, so that your GDP contributions go from like 1.39 to like 1.6 or whatever, without actually increasing capacity in any way, without increasing the weapons that we have, the number of soldiers that we have, the number of tanks or airplanes or whatever. It's like this notion that we need to hit 2% quickly, so we just give them all a big pay rise. If you have the same number of soldiers in the same number of places with the same weapons, but in one scenario, defense spending as a shared GDP is 1.8, and in another it's 2%. Yeah, are Canadians any safer because we quote unquote hit 2%? Just because they're paid more? No.
I'd say no. I will say this though. Here's my hope. I hope that the campaign, I hope what we saw last night was less of and more of what the future caucus meetings are going to look like, right? Because I think, especially on defense, every candidate had a couple of good points, right? I mean, Gould is right. A pay raise to the armed forces, great idea. They are underpaid, right? And to be honest, money talks. So that would drive recruitment, right? Gould also had a good point about, Freeland had a good point about, domestic defense production. Carney had the right idea in terms of strategy about talking about how we need to, focus on AI and cybersecurity and stuff like that, right? They all had excellent points. But I agree. We can't just shovel money into the boiler and hope that, everything's fine when the steam isn't going anywhere, right? Like these are big investments. With defense spending, it's go slow to go fast. And I know people are like, we haven't done anything in the past, 30 years. Yeah, you're right. But because there hasn't been the political capital or political will behind it, right? But now that there is that, let's not panic and throw money at it. Let's just, go slow to go fast. Figure out where you're going to put the money first. Is X amount of dollars going to go to pay raises? Is Y amount of dollars going to go to new infrastructure, including Arctic bases, which Carney mentioned, which are very important? Is it going to go to a new fleet of submarines? Is it going to go to new planes, right? Yada, 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 yada. So I'm glad to see that it's being talked about as a priority, and that's why I say I hope that last night is an example of what future caucus meetings or cabinet meetings will look like, as opposed to a leadership debate. Because if you put together a collage of all the different ideas, you come out with the winning plan.
Yeah, and the thing is that I don't think everything that Colonel Gold said on that stage was bad. I will say, if you're gonna do the we need to come out and say the thing, Gold, you were implicitly criticizing Mark Carney for 30 minutes, and you just never had the balls to actually, or the testicular fortitude or whatever, to just say the thing on the stage, to call out Carney directly. It was a lot of veiled shots and not so thinly veiled shots. It's so you could have done that. You could have said it, but whatever. I'm just being mean about it. I'm being mean partially because it's just so blatantly obvious to me why everyone found her performance good, and it's just it's a cheap sort of theatrics. It's judging the performance the way that you would judge a Broadway show, right? You're judging it as a show, not for A, what it will do to the polls, but also B, not judging it based on the actual substance of what is said.
And that's the honey trap that the Trudeau government was in, right? It was all about what they say in terms of what they do. But I hope and I believe that the Liberal membership right now recognizes that we need more doing, less saying, right? So I think that Gould's popularity and Gould's success in the way of the debate is just, it's nostalgia for a bygone era, in my opinion. That might be an interesting way of saying it, but that's my kick at the cat.
Was there anything? Okay, so here are some of the less important parts of this debate. One, is Mark Carney being sponsored by an AI company to just talk about AI in every single one of his answers?
No, I think it's Mark Carney recognizes that the implicit risks, but also possible upsides that AI poses, right? It is the big thing that everybody's talking about, and if we don't want to be caught holding the bag on that.
Do we? Are we not perfectly comfortable with just letting other people deal with this nonsense?
No, because the Americans are going to deal with it, and we're going to get sewered.
Counterpoint: didn't the world's dumbest people say this about crypto 10 years ago?
Yeah, but crypto and AI are different because crypto never had institutional buy-in, in the sense that the people pushing crypto back then and pushing it now are still the same people, and they're all mad as a box of frogs. AI has massive institutional buy-in, and it's still a developing technology. Listen, my personal take is I think AI won't be the big thing that everybody's screaming, ranting, and raving about, but it is going to play an interesting factor, and it does have the potential, like crypto, to be massively damaging if not appropriately deployed, right? So I think it's not a bad thing that he's talking about it. I think that, there is ways we can use it for productive means. I think, especially in terms of bureaucracy, there is probably an example like Bayless gave, note taking in doctors' offices, right? That's one thing the government could pay for a new technology to get developed. Bang, boom, wipe your hands, done, right? Cybersecurity is another one. So yeah, he talks about AI a lot, but I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's all anybody in private industry is talking about right now. How can we use AI here? How can we use AI there? Can we use AI for this? So that's my kick at the cat. I don't think it's being sponsored, and I think he just recognizes that this is the big kahuna.
Okay. Number two. What the hell was it? What did Christopher Freeland say? There was one. I mean, there were many moments where I was confused by what Christopher Freeland was saying. Yes. Why did Christopher Freeland invoke her status as a mother in a question about what she would do differently than Justin Trudeau? Did that make more sense to you than it did to me? Because it made zero sense to me.
It didn't make much sense in the context, in my opinion. Right? Maybe there's a place for that, but maybe I don't know. It didn't really tick with me. It's a nice.
It just seemed like random. I don't know.
Yeah, it was a little random. Like I get what she was getting at, right? She wanted to invoke, like, I'm a mother, I will fight for you as hard as I fight for my kids, right? Sure, fair enough. The only problem is that we have no idea how she fights for her kids, because that's private life, as it should be, right? So it's kind of just like, okay, sure. That's about all we could say to that.
Yeah, but and I think the other thing for me is like, is the implication I'm supposed to take? If this were a general election debate, I would wonder if the like implicit line she was trying to draw is that Trudeau doesn't fight hard for his kids, which I don't think she believes, and all reporting is that actually he's a pretty good dad, or at least by like political parents standards, is pretty involved. And then the other thing I would think is she trying to draw like an implicit comparison to Mark Carney, but is it the Carney is the godfather to her kids, or is she the godparent to his kids?
No, Carney's the godfather to one of her kids.
Yeah, so I really doubt it's that she was trying to make to draw some like implicit criticism of Carney, at which point I don't understand what she was trying to do other than get through that question without actually saying anything critical about the government.
Yeah, fair.
My third thing, so Frank Bayless is just running to try and get a cabinet job, right? We're just agreed on this.
Yeah, I agree.
I think
I agree, and I think if that was his goal, I think he succeeded. Right? I think he had a stronger showing than any of us were expecting. Right? He was level-headed. He was measured. Some of his ideas are outdated, in my opinion, especially on energy. But not all around, not a horrible performance. So if that's what he was gunning for, I wouldn't be surprised if he got it based on his performance in that debate.
Yeah. So here's the sort of related question. We're gonna get into. I'm gonna give you your platform to talk energy policy and talk about the piece you wrote for the site. I'm gonna give you that in a minute. What should Mark Carney do about the cabinet? Because he's going to be sworn in and probably immediately go to an election. Like, whether it's the day that he gets sworn in or he's sworn in and it's like 3 days later. There are multiple cabinet ministers in the cabinet who are not seeking re-election. Mary Ng, Anita Anand, I believe Ari Ferrani. That's AG, transport, and whatever title we gave Anand to like dismantle trade barriers or whatever. And international trade, is that what Mary Ng's still at, or did she get shuffled?
Yeah, that's where Ng is. I think she's trade. I think she's just trade, international development.
So that's at least 3 cabinet ministers there. I'm honest. Pascal Chanage, 2, I believe, so that's 4. 4 cabinet ministers at least not recontesting.
Yeah,
it's possible that some of the Freeland supporting cabinet ministers also, decide not to recontest. Knowing if they believe they aren't going to get a cabinet job under Mark Carney, your Mark Collins, etc. If you're Carney, do you shuffle the cabinet and then go to an election 3 days later? If you do you like keep a bloated Trudeau-sized cabinet? Do you make sharp cuts? And if you do make sharp cuts, do you try and pare it back? And then 2, what do you do with some of the Trudeau loyalists? Is a Mark Miller, a Bill Blair, like, do you try and just go for full generational and, renewal? And, do you do it, or do you just say I'm leaving the cabinet as is, we're in a national crisis, if they need to do things as caretakers, I want these people in the job, and I'm not going to shuffle the cabinet, go to an election, and then shuffle the cabinet again 6 weeks later.
Yeah. I don't know what good shuffling the cabinet before an election campaign would do, especially if they plan on going early. I think they can signal about it, but again, that's just election talk, right? I think if he declares and shuffles the cabinet before, opens himself up to some ammunition to be given to the piece. He's like, oh look, he's just appointing people because he can't, whatever. People want to sit on the Privy Council, whatever. In terms of what he does with the cabinet at any point, I think he's got to shrink it. I think we got to bring the total number of ministers down. I think it's to have one good minister take on three portfolios is having 3 separate ministers take on 3 separate portfolios, right? I think in terms of who's already in the cabinet, whoever's competent, doing a good job, you offer them that role and you keep them rolling. I think there will be a big shift after the fact. I think he could probably signal what he's going to do with the cabinet in terms of size, but in terms of appointment, maybe not. Just kind of shooting from the hip here, here's what I think a Carney cabinet 1.0 looks like, right? I think you've got Karina Gould as Deputy Prime Minister, which is crazy shout, but I think that might be the unification move. If Frank Baylis runs as an MP, he might get finance. I
think you would need to leave. I think you would need to leave Dom there.
Yeah, I think either leaving Dom there is not a bad shout. He's doing fine in the job. Hasn't had much time, but leaving Dom there. I think Christian Freeland, if she offers, she either goes I think she goes foreign affairs. I think Jolie gets swapped out into defense.
Can we just fire her? Can we just fire Melanie Jolie?
No, I think. Listen, I'll stay steady on this. I'll stand on this soapbox. Melanie Jolie is an underrated cabinet minister. She's a good organizer.
He thinks it's colonial to appoint ambassadors.
That was one thing said in a boardroom. I wouldn't take too much mind on that. Times have changed. Everyone knows that it's a different thing. And just look at she's walking a tight line right now. I know the Department of Foreign Affairs is doing the Lord's work over in Europe, right? So, we recognize the good thing, the bad things people do, but the good stuff almost always goes unthanked, right? So Melanie Jolie, I think there's a lot of potential for her in the future. I think that we could see her getting moved out of foreign affairs and into another high portfolio role. Like, I think natural resources.
I will accept Melanie Jolie at defensive. That means that we can GTFO, or we can get Bill Blair the fuck out. I will take. I will tolerate that.
That's, I think, the angle that they're going to take, in the sense that Melanie Jolie, she's a capable organizer, networker, and she's not afraid to go in and shoot from the hip. That's who you need in defense right now. Bill Blair, God love him, but he's a little bit meek, right? And that's not who we need right now. We need someone who's willing to go, and get chewed out by the defense staff, but also go and yell at arms manufacturers and the Treasury, right? The rest of the cabinet is a bit murky to me, but that's just a couple moves that pop into my head right off the draw.
So here's my please God fire them into the sun and just never bring them back list. I know some of these are more realistic than others. Stephen Guilbeault, it's not gonna happen.
Goodbye, Guilbeault. Get out.
Fire Stephen Guilbeault into the sun.
I never want to see him again.
Fire this fucker into the sun. The fact that this man cannot perform the basic function of a minister, which is to go out and announce government policy without stepping in it, is infuriating. The stupid fucking we're not going to build any more roads announcement, which was not, we're not building more roads. That was a specific announcement to say we are not going to fund the 413 in Ontario, okay, which is a needless, pointless highway, and that Doug Ford was coming to us asking for federal dollars on. And it had to get cleaned up by staff because he couldn't, because he can't delineate the distinctions. So get him the fuck out of here. Mark Miller, I just want nobody involved with the Justin Trudeau wedding party in anywhere in power ever again. Please. Oh, that's not true. If Jerry Butts would like to come back, he is fully free to do whatever the hell he wants. So I guess not. Just Mark Miller and Katie Telford, please. GTFO. Who else is on? Who else is? I usually Mark Holland can fuck off. Bill Blair can fuck off. Mark Holland being like, yeah, no, it's like anti-environment. It's anti-environment to go on a road trip. Fuck you.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
I can incredibly not to create palace intrigue and admitting bias here. I'm on a re-election campaign, but I can see Joanne Thompson. She's done with the short runway she's got. She's done a lot of good stuff in the seniors portfolio, which is a very limited.
The only Newfoundland Liberal reoffering.
Yeah, and that's another issue is that we haven't declared candidate. Like 6 out of 7 ridings are open for Liberals, so we got to get some people in there. Anyways,
yeah,
I can see her
she literally has to get a big job because she's the only one left.
I can see her getting health. To be honest, she has a background in nursing. She also has a background before she went into politics. She led a local shelter here at the Gathering Place, right? So I could see her getting something in like the socioeconomics or social, welfare scheme.
I would give Frank Bayless health.
Okay, fair ball. Then I can see her staying where she's at, maybe Minister for Families, Senior Social Development, some other kind of conglomerated portfolio. But I think the number one thing we need to see, Karen needs to signal, is don't shrink the cabinet in the terms like don't shrink away from what it's responsible for, but shrink the number of people who are involved. Because do
we need a separate minister for the Northern Ontario Economic Development cartel? Do we need a separate minister? Like the things that this government double bunks and doesn't double bunk are hilarious to me. It's fine for Steve McKinnon to be doing both employment and labor, but it's apparently unacceptable for us to just double bunk the regional development agencies together, or honestly, the worst one for me is like just never have a minister for women as a separate portfolio, and never have a minister for seniors as a separate portfolio. Like, just those can be add-ons. Like, they're not departments. There isn't a seniors department. There isn't a woman, a women's equality department. They are just tack them on to, like, genocide should just have Minister for Status of Women at that, because she's at Family and Children, whatever the hell we've rebranded that department to, like, because that's the fat you can trim, right? And you can give you can tack trade back into sort of like innovation industry, whatever. Like Champagne's ministry, whether he stays or moves, should probably just have international trade attached to it, given that that's all in the same general economic portfolio. Procurement and public services, I'm kind of okay with being hived off, but like, the Employment Skills Development Canada, or EDSC or whatever the hell it's called, ESTC, I believe. The department formerly known as HRSTC for years. My father's, he was a civil servant in that department for many, many years. But like, that department now has like 3 ministries, like 3 kind of sizable ministries coming out of it that used to be 1. Like, that's fine. You can split the apple how you want to, but the idea that these are all like super necessary is laughable.
I mean, I think somewhere, maybe it's in the Prime Minister's office, whatever, there's some sort of notion that in order to give people the impression that you're caring about them, you need to name a ministerial portfolio after them. And that's a little strange. I think you can just, be very clear in your mandate letters what you're responsible for and stick to it. It's I'm not going to say it's just a comms issue, because that's been beaten to death, but you don't have to have a portfolio to make people feel heard. People want, above all, Canadians are pragmatic, and Canadians are they know, they can smell bullshit, and I think if they collapse in the cabinet a bit and kind of don't shrink away from its responsibilities, but roll up some of the leadership. You get faster decision making. You'd get cleaner decision making. You'd save money because you're paying people a little bit less. But yeah, it's all around. It's a good thing.
My favorite extremely niche complaint about the Trudeau government is, so we gave Randy Boisvenu, who is a piece of shit, and I have hated since 2016. Yeah. But no, he's gonna. There's the rumor that they're just gonna knife him as candidate when Carney runs, if Carney wants to run in Alberta, if he's committed to that idea. But Trudeau gave him some like special advisor to the PM on like gay rights stuff, like fake job in 2016, 17, something. I was so pissed about this for the like dumbest but also like greatest reason, which is, if you think we deserve a cabinet portfolio, name him to the fucking cabinet. And if you don't, shut the fuck up. But that's the kind of thing that, like, that is why we have the proliferation of these sort of, I was going to say departments. They're not departments. These sort of job titles. Remember the Minister for Middle Class Prosperity?
Yeah.
What the fuck does that mean? It's just
nobody knows.
Going to be a cabinet title.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. It's like that's only a good idea to like maybe the minister who gets named and the PMO. Right,
exactly. Or
no Canadian's gonna go. Like, I'm sure if that specific minister walked into I don't know, a Walmart, or not Walmart, like a Sobeys or something like that, and went, "Hey, I'm the minister for XYZ," they'd be like, "Okay." Right?
We have a minister for middle class prosperity. I still remember my mother's reaction when I got to tell her that we now have a minister for middle class prosperity. I have seen that woman eye roll many times in my life.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I've ever seen her eye roll harder than minister for middle class prosperity. It was such like on the nose Trudeau nonsense.
So yeah, they got to cut that
out. Do you have any names that should, from the backbenches, that should get up?
Ooh, none that stand out. Again, Joanne Thompson's not on the backbenches. I'm hearing some interesting offerings that could be in Newfoundland and that could get pulled forward, in my opinion. That could get pulled to a cabinet position. I don't know, man. Nobody stands out, to be honest. I'm not up to date on who's on the backbench and who's punching, who's not.
So Patrick Wheeler in BC, I would be a big fan of him getting a job. Anna Gainey makes a lot of sense if we need, if we get rid of Mark Miller, or we get rid of, because there are a bunch of Quebec spots that have opened up, with Pascal not running again in Brom, with somebody else is running for mayor. I don't remember who now, but somebody is running for mayor of Montreal, I believe. So there are a couple of Montreal. If we fire Mark Miller, there's an opening. So I would love Anna Gainey. If only because, well, one, she's a Gainey. She's a former party president. Like, it makes sense for her to be there. And two, the other thing is just, I love that bit of Montreal. I love NDG. So, big fan of Annie Gainey. I feel like there should be I'm increasingly happy that Anderson Smith is in cabinet, which is really funny because I'm not going to say who it was, but to the person, I have no idea if you're listening to this podcast, to the person who was like, yeah, you need to chill the fuck out about Nate taking the housing job. Like, this is a fluid situation and you need, for your own sake, chill out and don't make this a problem for yourself. To that person, thank you very goddamn much. Dude, I was so pissed. My favorite part of it, because I was like, no, he's not going to advocate for a change in leader. And then the Star was reporting that basically he still ran the Ontario coup against Trudeau despite being in the cabinet.
Yeah.
I'm so glad we got rid of him. Can we just take a moment? I don't want to get into like a long conversation about the polls before we're getting to Andrew Furey in a minute. I don't want to get into a long conversation about the polls. They are what they are. They're very good for us. The race is winnable. The polls don't tell us anything about whether we will win.
Yeah.
How would you have imagined we would be polling this well when we got rid of Trudeau? Like, this is, as like a ringleader in the Fire Trudeau movement, this has worked out so much better than I ever could have imagined. Right?
Yeah. I agreed. And I'd say this. We all expected a bump, like when Trudeau was gone, just because that pressure point was gone. What we didn't expect is the momentum to swing so hard behind the Liberals. I will say this about the polls. Let's not let's not rest on our laurels here. We have a lot of work to do to convince people that we deserve government next. We got to keep that up. We got to keep that we're still down in the polls mentality, because we could be. It's very fluid right now. Canadians are frantic. They're panicked because of what's going on. And they're just looking for a steady hand to get us through there. So we had to prove that we are that. In terms of like, did we expect this to happen? No. No. Not so long ago, we were talking about let's try to crack 75 seats. And now we're like, shit, we could get a majority.
Right, exactly. And that's the thing that gets me is like, I've got a lot of American friends whose like main interest point in Canadian politics is they like me and I care about it, so they care about it.
Right.
And they're just like, wait, are they actually going to win this thing? And I'm like, I don't know. It's hard to say. I don't want to get my hopes up. This could just totally be, the high point. But they were like, oh, so would you be sad if they like lose early? And I'm like, fuck no. I was screaming on my site and on Twitter and on this podcast for all of 2024, save 100, Operation 100 seats, which then became Operation 80 seats, which then became Operation 75 seats, which then became Operation 70 seats, right?
Yeah.
If you could have promised any liberal in the country 95 seats, 28% of the vote, and Pierre Poilievre wins 199 seats. I have no idea if that math. Yeah, that math would could kind of work. Yeah. Something like that, right? Poilievre just under 200, but clearly in majority. Liberals very clearly in second place. Disaster mitigated, right? Sort of can live to fight another day. Liberal Party. Everybody, if they could press a button, everybody would have pressed it. Everybody would have locked that outcome in immediately. And now we're talking about 95 seats would be like, oh, that would feel like somewhat disappointing. It's incredible that we're in this place. I'm so happy about it. Also, Daryl Bricker, release your fucking regionals, you fucking bitch ass. Oh, we've decided to stop reporting regionals on vote intention. Yeah. Funny how you didn't do that when the Conservatives had a 26-point lead, but when their lead starts evaporating, suddenly we don't release regionals, which means that Fournier and Co can't put us in their models, which means that literally one of the best polls for the Liberal Party can't be included in anybody's models, making them inherently less reliable. Oh, look at that, Mr. I wrote the fucking book on how the big shift is going to happen in the 21st century was going to see the Conservatives as Canada's natural governing party, and then we lost 3 straight, and then the Conservatives lost 3 straight elections after I published that book. Look at me. I'm so fucking smart. I'm Daryl Brooker. Fuck you, you piece of shit. Andrew Furey, his legacy, favorite moments, where the party goes from here. Take it, my boy.
All right. His legacy will be a big one. Politics is a pretty dreadful place most of the time. Newfoundland and Labrador is no stranger to that. We were in a pretty rough go for a good 10 years, I'd say, prior to Andrew Furey stepping up in 2020, when he took office, we were literally on the brink of debt. The premier who was stepping down at the time, Dwight Ball, had to write a letter to Trudeau saying, "Hey, we're not going to be able to pay we're not going to have to. We don't have money to service our debt and keep the lights on." So that's where we are at. COVID hits, everything goes tits up, but Furey steps in, takes the helm, and things have improved. Right, still have a lot of the core issues we're facing with the demographic crisis, with healthcare, with economic diversification, stuff like that. But what Furey's done, he came in and he did exactly what he said he's going to do. He said, "I'm going to put forward all these plans. We're going to get them in motion, and then I'm going to get the hell out of the way." And that's exactly what happened, right? Put in a plan on economic recovery, put in the healthcare accords, put in the education accords. The demographic crisis is being stymied in the sense that, our population is growing, believe it or not, for the first time in like 20 years or something like that, right? Our bond ratings, we don't have junk bonds anymore. They got upgraded to A+ status, I think. Maybe it's a little higher than that. We have a new hydro deal in the MOU. We have new industries on the horizon. Everything's good. His resignation. Anybody who knows him, he always said, "Yeah, I'm maximum 2 terms. I do not want to be a career politician. I want to get this thing done. I feel like I need to step up," because he was a true outsider, right? He was an orthopedic surgeon, and then he was premier. Want to get these things done, step out of the way. Exactly what he did. The thing that's kind of left us a bit puzzled is the timing. I'm not going to say he's leaving us high and dry, because he's not. We have an excellent thing. We have an excellent platform and an excellent record that we can campaign on as Newfoundland and Labrador Liberals. But we all kind of expected and hoped he'd take us through at least the next election, then step down. But he's decided it's been rough on his family, and it's time to step by. So fair ball to him. He himself, his family's had a rough ride with it. During the whole convoy thingy, we had our local nut jobs terrorize his family at their home. They showed up and blared horns and stuff like that, and that's just not on. He's got a young family. So fair play to him. We need the extra orthopedic surgeon, so I look forward to him stepping back into practice. And he's a good man. He's a good leader, and history will look kindly on him.
I'm always going to defer to people who leave early in politics as opposed to people who cling on. Like, it's hard to like moralize about a politician for me, because it's just like I'm too like crass and cynical. I think the thing for me is it's always good when politicians understand themselves and understand when it's time to go. It is a sign. Hilariously, it's the politicians who you would want to stick around who are the ones who understand when it is time to go.
Yeah.
And the ones who, suck are the ones who decide to, cling on forever. I've always found him to be fairly impressive. I thought he's, been a sort of voice of reason in the country, in my limited sort of peering east. I guess the question becomes runners and riders. I have a name, and this is like my deeply diseased Ottawa brain. Seamus O'Regan?
I've heard that too. Wouldn't be surprised if he has a go at it. Although, he stepped aside for personal reasons. He was out of the province a lot. I know it's hard on him and his husband, so I get that. I wouldn't be shocked if he went for it. I think he'd be good at the role. I think he has the name behind it. I again, just like I said, when the Liberal leadership was on the go, I'll need to see what each candidate puts forward before I swing my support behind them. Seamus O'Regan is definitely a name that's being floated. Another one that's in the mix.
I think a lot of the reasons that Ottawa was no longer a reasonable fit do not necessarily apply to going back home. Spoiler alert, Sean Fraser's probably going to run for the New Brunswick, Nova Scotia Liberal leadership, which will be a similar thing of like, Sean Fraser, in Fraser's case, it's sort of like fairly well known in the Ottawa bubble that like his wife just wanted him to get the fuck out and has wanted him to get the fuck out for a while now.
Yeah.
And, from what I've heard about Seamus, it's a hard trek, man. It's a hard trek being a Newfoundland cabinet, like a cabinet minister in Ottawa from Newfoundland. That's a hard thing to manage if you've got a, spouse back home. And
yeah,
it's significantly easier if your commute is the 20 some odd minutes from his front door to, to the office in St. John's than the Lord knows how many hours of flights he has to take.
3.5, right? And that's, yeah. So I agree, right? I think he could. I think that's a personal decision he's going to have to take. But I'd welcome him in the race. Another one I've heard floated. We know we don't know for a fact, but we've heard that he's going to go for an MHA seat, which is equivalent to MLA. Ken McDonald wants to go provincial.
That would make some sense.
Yeah, so he wants to go provincial. He wants to run against a PC incumbent near his district, and I think he has a good chance of taking it. Other names that would not be familiar to your audience, unless they're in Newfoundland, is the Minister of Finance here, Siobhan Cody. She's rumored to want it. John Abbott, who ran against Andrew Furey in the last leadership race, he'll probably make an offering. I'd say Sarah Studley, who is, in my opinion, the best fit for the job. Very competent, very pragmatic, very steely-eyed missile woman, which is what we need. I will say this about the Newfoundland and Labrador Liberal leadership race, is it's going to make the federal race look like a tea party, which it is, but they get rather intense. And the more candidates enter, the more intense it's going to get. So as someone who's in the know here, it's going to be a rough ride. It's a small pond with a bunch of medium to big sized fish. And we'll see who comes out of the woodwork. He resigned yesterday. Kind of came as a bit of a shock in terms of the timing. So nobody's putting wheels in motion right now, but we'll see.
This is the shit. This is the stuff I love. Just digging into the internecine warfare, because that's one of the things I want to do is I want to strengthen some of my provincial coverage, be it myself or in allowing smarter people than me to do this, because I think one of the broad failures of the Canadian media, and one of the lanes that is available to be, not to use this word, but quote unquote disrupted, right, is a better coverage of the provinces. Because so on Monday I wrote a big long piece about Quebec, and it's remarkable how few Anglos can write about Quebec in a way that Quebecers find worthwhile, right? Perceptive, that they get it. And it's that's not a good thing, man. And that's Quebec. That's our second biggest province. The provinces so frequently turn into black boxes of understanding that get reduced to extremely useless sort of caricatures, right? BC is this lefty haven where everybody smokes pot. Alberta is just essentially oil workers entirely. Saskatchewan's just farmers. The provinces are far more interesting than that.
Oh yeah.
And one of the things that I want to sort of recommit to is meeting the moment, not just in Ontario and not just in BC and not just in Quebec, because there is this great landscape of politics happening. And also, oftentimes the issue that ends up being a federal issue or ends up being an issue in Ontario, there is an origin out east or an origin out west, or this was trial run somewhere else, and it'll be a lot more useful to cover the stuff that quote unquote more people care about if you actually understand the roots of this stuff, as opposed to just sort of half-assing it with 20 minutes of Wikipediaing to try to figure out who the hell any of these people are and what these scandals are about. Look at Bill 713 in New Brunswick and the whole trans rights, parental rights trans stuff that happened a year and a half ago. Well, nobody west of New Brunswick knew any of that stuff until it happened, and that's not a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. And like a lot of interesting stuff happens, especially provincially here, and like in every province has its own unique challenges. But again, it can trickle over up away. Furey was really good at being the person who kind of break that stereotypical mold, in the sense that there's a fear amongst the Newfoundland and Labrador. I won't say establishment, but yeah, we'll say establishment. Not that word has a negative connotation, but I'm not using it in that sense. People don't want to see this province just become a tourist trap where we all, run around in yellow hats and drink rum. Furey believed that in his core and was not afraid to throw the weight around to keep that from happening, right? So he was a good leader. It's big shoes to fill, and he'll be sorely missed, I'll tell you that.
You made your writing debut for my site yesterday. I mean, you wrote it last week, and I punted it till yesterday because I wrote. So here's the thing. I wrote a 2,500 word piece for Monday. I was live blogging the debate last night. I wrote a piece today, and I am writing. I've already prepped about 2,200 words of what's going to probably end up being around 3,000 words on Bonnie Crombie for Thursday night. So I basically was like, I needed to punt that piece. I needed something to fill that Tuesday slot this week. On the politics of Energy East, on the politics of a West East pipeline, I should say, and more specifically, you make the case that we should look east, not west, to our energy solution. It's a very good piece. Everybody should read it. Make the case. What's so interesting about it? What is so why are you convinced that the East has a solution? Just go with it where you will.
Absolutely. So we hear a lot of hullabaloo about, West to East pipeline, West to East pipeline, West to East pipeline. And if we're talking about crude oil, then if you're looking for a Line 5 replacement in Quebec and Ontario, then yeah, maybe Energy East makes sense going that far. But to take it as far as New Brunswick is lunacy for the following reasons. People think of more pipelines meaning more money. And while that is sort of true in the short term, where the real money is in the reserves, right? The oil and gas is in the ground, and pipelines just provide a faster throughput. They're not making more oil and gas, right? So in terms, I think it makes a more sense geographically, logistically, technically, and politically if you look east, if you can, right? We have oil reserves here off Newfoundland and Labrador. We have 4 platforms currently operating, soon to be 5, potentially even 6, all which have the capacity on board to compress and store and export natural gas. What does the market really want right now? Natural gas. The sites have tidewater access built in. You don't need to drag a pipeline across 5 jurisdictions. You only need to deal with one, and that is Newfoundland and Labrador. And the equipment's already out there. So it's literally a minimally invasive procedure or a capital investment for a government to make to secure natural gas for not only Canada, because those carriers could dock as easily in New Brunswick as they could in Morocco, to supply the energy needs, right? We have something like 40 trillion cubic feet of total reserves out there that we know are there, right? Sorry, it's 13 trillion cubic feet. 13 trillion cubic feet proven, because all they've done is reinject it since 1997 because of the Atlantic Accords. We know where it is. Those wells can easily be converted to backflow and produce the gas instead of injecting it. We hook that up to an export line, have that line go to a platform, or just go directly to an LNG carrier, compress it, liquefy it, ship it off for storage. Ship it for, sell it. It makes perfect sense, in my opinion, and it makes hell of a lot more sense than dragging a pipeline across 5 jurisdictions just to sell a lower grade product. Why should we drag a pipeline across 5 jurisdictions, one of which has been historically proven to be against such a development, when we could just, have the same outcome with Newfoundland and Labrador oil and gas? It's just my kick at the cat.
It makes a lot of sense. I think the question So I think there's a lot in that of like one, what is the like virtue of doing this? What is the virtue of creating a constitutional shit fist? Like, because that, like, I'm sorry, Quebec can say what it's want, energy isn't happening. They're just not going to allow it to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we're going to create a big fight about Quebec. We're going to tie it up in, literally decades of lawsuits.
Or you could just not.
For no reason. And the other thing is people talk about, oh, we need to create energy independence. Okay, this is not going to create energy independence. I would just like to be very clear about this. You can view energy independence as a good thing. That's fine. You can view that. An export pipeline is not how you create energy independence. It might be worth doing. That's not how you create energy independence. Those are not the same things, guys.
Yeah, and energy independence only goes so far. What we need is we have primary producing industries in the sense that we have a lot of natural resources. We don't have industrial development capacity here in Canada. We need to develop that, right? Find a market for the oil and gas and then sell it, right? But if all we're talking about is exporting things, then Energy East makes a lot more sense because, like you said, we only need to deal with one jurisdiction and not 5. We're just not bypassing Quebec. It's just the fact that they don't want a pipeline going through their territory. Can't blame them. There wouldn't be a pipeline on Newfoundland and Labrador land, right? It would be all offshore, out of sight, out of mind. Like it just, to me, it's a technically and politically and logistically a lot more feasible plan. It's also closer to the markets that want it, right? We are the most easterly province in Canada. We are we're closer to Ireland than we are to Vancouver. Like it just makes a lot more sense to do that than drag Energy East across. So
yeah, no, it was a very good piece. I'm hoping I'm gonna continue to be able to bug you to write things for me.
Absolutely, happy to do it.
I'm just trying to think if there's anything else. I mean, Bonnie Crombie generally exists. Have you paid, okay, scale of 1 to 10, how much attention have you paid to this Ontario election?
I've paid attention to it. I follow the news headlines a bit, obviously not as far as on Ontario. One thing stands out, though. The headlines and the information spaces are dominated by Doug Ford, in the sense that anything that Crombie and Merritt Stiles are doing, they aren't having. They're not doing a tap, right? They aren't grabbing headlines. They're not engaging with people. It's just, I don't know what they're selling, but it's been perfectly clear what Doug Ford is selling, right? To me, I don't know what the issue is. I don't know if it's a lack of buy-in. I don't know if it's a lack of, I don't know what. But one thing is clear from Ontario, outside of Ontario looking in, Doug Ford is dominating the other parties. And that's a bit sad, to be honest.
Well, if you would like to find out, read my incredibly long read on why Bonnie Crombie has failed, which is already mostly written. And my favorite thing is that people are just asking me like, "Oh, so how much of it have you gotten? Have you already written it?" I'm like, God, what is my reputation that everybody just knows I have the Crombie hit piece like waiting in my chamber? But also, yes, I do have the Bonnie Crombie hit piece sitting in my chamber. This is a woman, Bonnie Crombie. The reason I hate Bonnie Crombie so much, she tried. Nate Erskine-Smith made the not unreasonable point that this is a 2-election comeback from 3rd place to government, and said that he is the right and that the party needs generational change. And then Bonnie Crombie called him a sexist for saying this, and then was like, no, we can win this in 1 election, and is now trying to like lower expectations so much that she, if she wins her seat again and wins like 17 seats after we won 8 last time, we're all just going to be like, oh, Bonnie, that's fine. You get to stay as leader.
Yeah.
You cannot go from you can win this in 1 election to, we did well enough to stay. Fuck this.
That's NDP thinking there.
Yes, it is deeply dipper ass fucking logic. Thank you. Like it's so dumb. It's so bad. I hate my party, and let's just say if Crombie does about as badly as I think, which is like a nominally good result, but like utterly short of her expectations, either when she said she could win the next election, or the expectations, the lowered expectations that they set in a Toronto Star piece in December, which is like 30 to 35 seats, which they're going to fall short of as well. If that happens, and I'm right about Crombie, and I was right about Trudeau, and then if Jagmeet Singh gets blown out in the next election, which I think, let's be real, we have defenestrated the NDP without even talking. Like, has Mark Carney ever said Jagmeet Singh's name?
Nope.
And yet he's completely stolen his entire vote share. One of the most impressive acts the Liberals have ever done is just completely destroying the NDP. They're
getting clipped.
They won the war without firing a bullet.
This just goes to strength of Mark Carney, to be honest, in my opinion. But yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like, we ate our lunch without even trying. Ate their lunch, sorry. I think the bigger story, though, is the Bloc Québécois. They've taken a whack, too.
Yeah, because somebody put it to me that voting for the Bloc is already kind of a luxury proposition, but it's a luxury proposition that Quebecers feel like they can do because things are mostly fine. And now that we're in an actual crisis, they don't feel like they have that luxury. And if the ballot question becomes Poilievre, who is better to handle Trump, Poilievre or Carney? Quebec is still the most anti-conservative province. Like, people talk about, Poilievre is doing so well in Quebec. Yeah. Compared to Andrew Scheer and Aaron O'Toole, yeah. Objectively true.
Yeah.
Still like tapping out at like 25%. It's not a conservative province at all in the slightest. And that, I think, is the opening for the Liberals. And I went long on independence and the PQ and the sort of like new bloc in my piece on Monday, but like, it really seems the thing that stopped the Liberals from winning majority government the last two times was the Bloc winning 30 seats. If the Bloc can fall to 20, we're majority government's back on. Also, Atlantic Canada, the Liberals, Carney Mentum in Atlantic Canada. Like, do we think that's real?
Yes, we do think it's real. In fact, we know it to be real in the sense that 6 months ago, if you asked, the event I was at last night was an open invitation. It was come on if you'd like, right? 6 months ago, you might have got 6 people there. In fact, I was at an event when there was only like 4 or 5 people at there, including myself, right? Yesterday, we had a packed room of 150, 175 of a broad range of people, some of whom are never involved in politics before, right? People here were tired of Trudeau. We're tired of the kind of like the pedantic nonsense that they got on with. Farewell to him. But now they see Carney. They see him as a serious person. They believe he's the right person to lead us through. They see him as an alternative to Poilievre, who they don't think much of. We don't think much of. Boom. So, hello. Let's get her done.
If this was really just about Justin Trudeau being the worst,
I think it might.
A lot of people who called me, Russian assets on Twitter for pointing out that the Liberal Party should get rid of Trudeau need to look.
They're real quiet right now.
Sorry,
I think that's the water on the beans, right? Like, Trudeau was past. He overstayed his welcome. It was time for him to go 2 years before he did. So
yeah, man. But like, this is the one reason on March 9th, I've been extremely critical of Christopher Freeland, right? And I don't think that's going to change moving forward. On March 9th, I'm pouring a drink and I'm toasting to Christopher Freeland. We do definitely owe her a debt of gratitude for that resignation and for being as pointed in that resignation as she was.
Yeah, here.
Whatever Mark Carney achieves, whether he wins, loses, whether he saves all the furniture, 80% of the furniture, whatever, we weren't going to get rid of Trudeau without her. It wasn't going to happen. And we owe her a significant debt of gratitude for that fact. Whatever we think of the leadership race, whatever we think of her legacy in government, whatever. Chrystia Freeland is definitely owed a debt of gratitude, and when it's announced the Carney's leader, the first drink I have, I'm going to do it. I'm going to toast to Chrystia for her service to country and party, and I think we all should do that because she has given us a fighting chance.
Here to that, Evan. Could not agree more. I'll be doing the exact same thing. Yep.
I think that makes perfect sense as the way to go out on this podcast. Thank you so much for coming on. Hoping I kind of, for the sake of this podcast, I kind of hope that there's a couple of weeks between Carney winning and the election, mostly just so I can there are a bunch of people I want to have on the podcast who are unfortunately working for various leadership campaigns. And so I would like 2 weeks of everyone just kind of relaxing and unwinding so that I could have those people on the pod and then get into the election campaign. I don't know. I think the election's going to be interesting. I'm going to definitely keep having you on. I'm going to keep having you. Right. I'm thinking of I'm thinking of a Newfoundland Chronicle sort of weekly column, maybe weekly, bi-weekly during the campaign. We'll see, because Newfoundland. The funny thing is that Newfoundland being the first place that has results, Newfoundland, despite its sort of being quirky in a lot of ways, is kind of somewhat representative of the country. What happens in St. John's East and whatever the artist formerly known as St. John's South Mount Pearl. They renamed all your ridings in Newfoundland.
They did.
Pissing me off. But those will tell us, St. John's East will tell us what's happening somewhat tell us what's happening in liberal NDP seats, whether the NDP, how much the NDP falls back, how much the Conservatives can break into urban Canada. The artist formerly known as St. John South Mount Pearl is a just sort of typical liberal conservative battle. The western seats will tell us
how you doing rural.
The rural sort of the sort of remaining liberal rural bastions will tell us about Northern Ontario. That'll be very useful. I'm very Labrador will be just messy in a really interesting way. I'm very curious about Newfoundland politics. Actually, it's not a bad time for you and I to have gotten closer.
I appreciate that. Listen, we'll have you here anytime.
Ben Oates, BOATES02 on the Twitter machine. Blue Sky, I don't know what your Blue Sky is, mostly because I just refuse to engage with Blue Sky at this point. Blue Sky got mad at me for pointing out that Melanie Jolie's an idiot, and then so I'm just I'm mad on Blue Sky now. It's Blue Sky is for the people who don't like my Twitter persona, and it's my Twitter persona is unfortunately my real life persona. Addie Scriptshot on Twitter and Blue Sky, I think. Scriptshotscripted.substack.com. Oh, what did you make of the McDavid golden goal at the Four Nations?
Oh, beautiful! Injected into my veins.
So the funny thing was, I was watching with some people, and literally 90 seconds before McDavid scores, I did a whole thing of if there is a hockey god, if fate is real, McDavid scores the game-winning goal.
Yep, and there we go. Passing the torch, man.
The 2010 comparisons and the 2-2 tie and all of it, and I finish it, and then I saw it coming before it even happened. I just knew once I saw Austin Matthews turn to the corner, I knew it was happening, and I screamed. I screamed. It was so good.
It was a beautiful setup from Marner. Bennington also had a great game, great tournament, to be honest, right?
We all owe Jordan Bennington the biggest apology. What the fuck was that overtime from Bennington? How the hell did he do that?
he's no stranger to big games, and that was no different. He owned it, man.
Apparently, we just need every big game to be held in Boston because apparently Jordan Binnington just becomes the GOAT in Boston. I mean, he won a road game 7 to win a cup in Boston.
Seriously.
And now Binnington, your sins are forgiven, even though you nearly kept blowing leads to get us there, but that's fine. Ben Oates, thanks for coming on, buddy.
Appreciate your time, Evan. Thank you.